is Luis Aguilar, and today we're going to be talking about the basics of arrays. So, what are arrays? So, at this point, you guys should be very familiar with variables. As you know, variables are basically name storage locations where it holds a certain memory, right? A certain information such as integers, decimals, floats. You guys should be very familiar with them. Arrays are basically are basically variables, but they hold an abundance of values, right? So they allow you to store and work with multiple values of the same data type. Integers, floats, and all those data types. How are they declared? Well, they're sort of declared the same way as a variable. As you can see here, we have an array called val that holds 5 elements of 5 integer values. Now, a good way to understand arrays is through visualization. So as you can see here, when we declare an array, it is sort of visualized like this. There's 5 spots to hold 5 integer values, right? A good thing to note is that when looking at arrays and working with them, they're sort of, each integer value is sort of called an element, and it starts at element 0 and element 4. Now you may be wondering, well, if I declared 5, why does it start at 0? Well, there's still 5 integer values. The thing is that they just start at 0. So element 0 will be your first integer value, and element 4 will be your 5th integer value. This will be very important when in the future when wanting to traverse arrays and wanting to get a specific array. So let's say you want to get the first element in an array. You wouldn't want to put element 1 because that will get you the second element, if that makes sense. That will get you the second spot. If you want to get the first element of an array, you would have to declare it as element 0. So just note that the amount of elements counted can be seen as n minus 1. So in this case, we have 5 elements. The last element will be 4. So how do we access them, right? So each element has a subscript, as you can see. We will need to specify which element index we would want to access. So I know you may have questions of how do we input, how do we output, how do we see the contents of array. I know you guys may think, oh well, if they're sort of like in regular variables, we could do, for example, if we go back, integer value 5 equals so on and so forth, but that is necessarily not the case. So now we're going to be working with arrays when I go to the online compiler. So as you can see here, I've declared an array called hours with 5 elements, sort of similar to what I showed you guys before. And right here, I'm trying to see what's in our last element. So let's see, let's run it. Pull this up. And you can see it's a garbage value. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with that, right? Now let's see what's in the first element. Garbage value. And just for curiosity, let's see what's in the fourth element. Rating at 0, right? So since we didn't actually put anything in the array, it could be filled with 0 or it could be filled with garbage value. So a good practice when you guys are actually working with arrays is if you guys aren't using them initially, at least initialize them to 0 so that way you guys can get precise values so that way you do start to use them. So now that we see that there's actually nothing in this array, let's fill it up, right? So one way to fill it up is we could do something like this. So let's just simple cout statement of enter hours. Do that, right? So we can do that. We could do enter hours, and then we could cin. And then just for time's sake. Alright, cool. P1. Three. And then 4. Remember, we only need to go up to 4 because these are 5 elements and it will allow us to input these elements. Right? This will basically fill the array. So let's run it. Enter hours 10, 12, 13, 50, 10, and then you're done. So as you can see here, it prints out the CL statement after we enter all the hours. And since we're actually calling for hours, the fourth element, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, it's actually 50, and it prints out, right? So let's try to access the first element, and then we run it again. So just put any value you want, and then there you go, it'll access the first element. Now you're probably wondering, okay, what if we try to access the sixth element? Let's say you want, this is a very common mistake, you put element 5, right? Let's see what happens when you run it. So let's do it, right? 12, whatever, just garbage values, 0. The thing is with C++ is that there's probably no, you are responsible for being within your array bounds. If you, like I said, this is a very common mistake. You just need to keep in check how big your arrays are, and try to stay within those bounds, so that way you don't mess up your code, because a lot of arrays can be used in a lot of things. So now that I showed you the basics of array, what else can we do? Well, arrays aren't just exclusively used for integer values. You can also do string arrays. So let's say you wanted to make an array with sort of names, you could do that as well, planets or anything sort of like that. You can also do partial array initialization. So let's say you want to create an array, but you don't have all the values you want yet. Let's say you have an array of 10, but you only have half of those values available to you right now. That is perfectly fine. You can do that. So I just want to say that these are the basics of arrays. There are far more ways to clean up arrays, such as inputting. You can do a for loop. That's probably the best way to do it. Arrays are very useful for slimming down code and making it more useful, making it more proficient. So like I said, these are just the basics of the array. There's way more you could do, and I want to thank you guys for watching.